You have to remember, I mean, this is the only country in the world that doesn't allow girls to go to school. It's the 21st century. That's shocking. It really is. So, and they recognize it. And so this is going to have a generational impact if you don't allow one generation of girls to go to school. So, and they want to stop that.
Aeyliya, Amie, it is wonderful to speak to you about an unfinished journey. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is a beautiful and powerful film. Um,
Thank you.
it truly is. How did it begin? How did the process to create it come to be?
Um,
I'm talking to you from Canada. No, Aeyliya's in Canada. I'm in Athens. I'm talking to you from Athens, where I live. I'm American. I moved here in 2018, and besides make films, I run a nonprofit called Global Girl Media, where I train young women to sort of enter the filmmaking stream through nonfiction filmmaking and storytelling. And I was working predominantly with migrant young women and Greek women. And we heard that a group of female parliamentarians from Afghanistan were going to come through Greece and would be hosted in Greece for some time as they waited for their papers to get to Canada. And we thought we would just go and meet them because it was an opportunity to find out what happened, sort of offer solidarity and help if we could. And some of the young women were actually Afghan refugees who had been living here for 2, 3 years. They came through the boats illegally and were living in camps, a little different, but we're very excited to meet these women. And we started filming that way for about 3.5. Actually, it took them a lot longer to get to Canada, just all the paperwork and the process. The IOM process is quite lengthy. There's still some still here actually that haven't gotten to Canada. And they came at different times, and Aeyliya was on the other side as they arrived. I eventually spent some time in Canada as well, and that's how it began.
These are some remarkable women that, based on these, I'm so thrilled that these are the women you got to chat with because they are incredible. There's a real strength within them and a real courage. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about them. And there's one comment is that they talk about feeling responsible for the other Afghan women. Um, how in your mind do they make use of that is the wrong word, but lean into that responsibility?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Aeyliya.
I think um, they haven't forgotten that they were politicians, these women, and why they became political leaders in their
Yeah.
country. So even though they were forced to migrate to Canada and, start their lives over again, they remember what they were doing with their causes. And first and foremost was to their country and to serve the country and their people. So they wanted to continue to raise their voices here in Canada and not have the world forget what is happening to women and girls in Afghanistan. And you have to remember, I mean, this is the only country in the world that doesn't allow girls to go to school. It's the 21st century. That's shocking. It really is. So, and they recognize it. And so this is going to have a generational impact if you don't allow one generation of girls to go to school. So, and they want to stop that. So they know how important it is to, raise their voice and to have the world kind of pay attention, even though it's really hard for the world to pay attention right now. But yeah.
And many of their constituents were calling them constantly. They were fielding many. I mean, I watched it in Canada. Just, I mean, in in Athens, just many calls, WhatsApp groups, chats, everything. And they haven't given up their responsibility. And Zepnun has daughters there. Nilafar has parents still there. They all have families still in Afghanistan as well. So. And many of them were
Yeah.
politicians, not just for one term, for a long time. So this is their identity, and it's not something you slip out of easily.
And even and Nargis, like she's very active and she's trying to, push and trying to get the world attention onto back to the country, and she's working with a lot of NGOs and with the UN, and she's also hearing um, from women on the ground what's going on, as each edict gets passed and what the impact is.
And this is one of the things I think is so interesting in this film, and interesting, so horrifying in so many ways, is you see these women who are forced to watch these things. Almost they're safe, shall I say, where they are, but they're forced to watch the horrors at home from afar. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. The time you spent with them. Can you talk about that tension of watching the suffering of their friends, their family from abroad? You can see the burden that it weighs upon them.
Oh yeah,
I mean, part of the challenge, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I think part of the challenge is like knowing when to put the camera down. There are several times, especially with Stephanie, calling her daughters. She never asked me to, but there were times, it just didn't feel right because, the suffering was just so deep. How do you, I think they really put their trust in us that this film is somehow going to help get her daughters to Canada, or that the film will help the world not forget Afghanistan. So that's why they gave us, and it was a huge gift for us as filmmakers and as women, to be able to witness this. But I didn't do it lightly, and I think, the question's really interesting because you think about it a lot in filmmaking when you're so intimate in intimate situations. I think, and we split characters, so Aeyliya can talk about the two that she covered, and but it was like, I think as time went on, us being there, they got more used to it, and I think that also Aeyliya's cultural background and identity helped a lot, as well as the girls here. But it's also something I think that women to women, when you're talking about something really traumatic or really difficult, somehow when you've just got that woman, you can hold her hand or you can share a silence. It's something that we can do, that we do in a different way, especially with the camera, although we had a male DOP who was quite feminine, really wonderful DOP. I don't know, Aeyliya, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, you do feel, you can see their burden, their struggle, right? Because they were activists and they were helping women in their country when they were there. And when you're forced to leave and then you can't do anything, um, that's the frustration. They became political leaders, to kind of help the women, help their country. They wanted to progress. And then they see everything that they've done being rolled back. And that's really a frustration. Like it's probably quite maddening for them, I can imagine, right? Um, but yeah, it was really challenging to watch them see what's happening in their country and not be able to do as much as they could because they're up against a lot of the world politics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you can see them trying to navigate the bureaucracy from on the Canadian side, but seeing everything from the other side. And I wanted, you mentioned before about education. And then one of the things I think about this film, there's a beautiful line that talks about the light of education giving way to the darkness of ignorance. And as we see in this film with the Taliban closing schools and forcing young women out of that, I was wondering, what in both of your minds does the nation and these women lose when the light of education is taken from them?
You lose everything.
Yeah.
Generations, right? You have
Yeah.
uneducated women raising children. You have, it's everything. It's the linchpin for everything. And it's not like, it's like the girls, like Zephnun's daughter, who was going to graduate from high school, I mean, these are girls that loved education, and I think like uh, you see it in the underground schools, and you see it in their absolute determination under the worst circumstances to still get some kind of education through their phones, through their allies, through their. That's another film because that's exploding. And I think also our the women in our film got an education at a time when there were models of other women that were educated. So there was a lineage, right, that they followed, and an inspiration, whether it be a mother or a strong father who really wanted to have his daughter educated, in Niloufer's case. So it's not going to stop. I mean, it's definitely a horrible thing that's happening, but I look to Nargis, and what Nargis says all the time is that you know, the Taliban may seem scary and strong, but Afghan women are far stronger.
Yeah. I mean, the education, like even though there are underground schools, there are not enough of them. And so there are going to be a lot of young girls that won't be educated. And what's also happening, because the country is, there's a huge humanitarian crisis with poverty there. And so what's happening is that girls are getting married younger and younger. So once they get married, so their education will be cut off. They will no longer be able to go to school because they'll soon have families and they'll have to take care of them. So this is a rippling effect across the entire society, which is really so detrimental for that country. And it's not
And region.
Oh,
I mean,
completely.
and world, right? We're all gonna feel the effects of this eventually.
Yeah. So it is so damaging. It's also dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we see in this film is the legacy that these women have, even that, like you said, that they, multiple years of empowerment, and then have that taken away. But there's still these women who are there. And as we're wrapping up here, I think it might be Nargis. I might be wrong on this, but somebody makes reference to our silence is our death. And as we wrap up, I was wondering if you could speak to the power of a statement like that, especially for these women.
Yeah. I believe that's Humera who said that. Yeah, she said our silence is our death. Because really, if you look at what's happening to women's rights, if you strip women's rights from any country, you're basically eroding the foundation of that country. And so that's what's happening, I believe, in Afghanistan. And so they know this, so they need to speak up, no matter how, even if countries are not going to heal them, they're going to continue to fight. And they need to fight. They need to continue to fight and raise their voices for what's happening in women, for women. And
Well,
Amie, you want to respond to
oh,
No, I think you said it pretty well. I do think of what Hillary Clinton, although I hate quoting her, but she did say this at Beijing International Conference for Women, that women's rights are human rights. And that to just think of it as a separate gender, it's actually a human rights issue. It's not just girls not going to school. It's not just bad for girls. It's bad for boys. It's bad for society. It's bad for all of us, right? So.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, thank you so much for your time. I know we have to wrap up, but it's a beautiful film. And very, very powerful. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Have a great day.